All right, welcome to our last video for week one. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to describe a data set or distribution of data, or compare two or more data distributions. When we want to describe a data set to others, when we're writing reports or presenting data to then later draw conclusions from, or we want to make comparisons between two sets of data, there are four things we typically look at, and I like to remember it with the SOCS. Remember your socks. And in this case, socks. So for shape, the very first thing you're going to do anytime you're presented with a set of data is you're going to graph it. You're going to choose the appropriate graph depending on the type of data. If it is categorical, typically we look at bar charts and we're not making this type of comparison. Usually this type of comparison is quantitative data, and the most common graph is either a histogram or a box plot, either or. Draw a histogram or a box plot, and then you describe the shape. And remember, when we describe shape, we're looking for two things. We're looking for the number of peaks, right? How many modes? And we're looking at symmetry. Is it symmetric or is it skewed? The other thing you're going to do is when you go to outliers, most of the time, unless you're explicitly asked to run the 1.5 IQR rule, it's enough to look at your graph from the first step and identify any visual outliers. Once we've done shape and outliers, we're going to do center and spread, and that's going to fall in one of two groups depending on our answer to outliers. We're going to do the mean and the standard deviation if we have no outliers and our graph is roughly symmetric, or we're going to do the median and the IQR if our data had visual outliers or if there was heavy skewness in the graph in part one. And you'll notice that takes us through most of what we've talked about in this first week. Shape, outliers, center, spread. The shape and the outliers determine which measures of center and spread we're going to use. If you are comparing two sets of data, you want to make comparisons for each of the steps in SOCS. So you should compare the shapes. Graph A is symmetric, graph B is left skewed. You should make comparisons for outliers. Graph A has an outlier on the left, graph B has no outliers. When you talk about center and spread, you should make comparisons using less than, greater than, or approximately equal to. A's mean is approximately equal to B's mean, or A's mean is greater than B's mean. So typically when I'm asked to describe or compare distributions, I'm going to have 4 sentences in my answer. OCS, one for each of my socks. All right, so that does take us to the end of the week one material. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. I'll also be available from 6 to 7 p.m. on Thursday this week for live office hours. The link is in Canvas, and you can log in anytime between 6 and 7 to ask homework questions or clarification on the reading in the notes. Your test for this week also opens on Thursday at 8 a.m. A reminder that you only get one attempt, so use it wisely. And unless you have arrangements through PACE, you have a 3-hour time limit. So find a time between Thursday morning and Sunday night to sit down with your notes and your book in a nice quiet headspace, maybe have some water and a snack, and then plow through that test. Again, it is open note, open book. And if you run into technical issues or questions during the test, you can always send me an email. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and I will see you during week 2.